Good morning, folks, or actually now it is good afternoon, depending, of course, on where you're joining us from. JB here with you live from the WFLA Now Stream Center, about to take you live to Sarasota for a police press conference and the release of body camera video that we're about to have for you here live across all platforms. Now, we have to pass along that viewer discretion is advised because of foul language and potentially violent content that we're going to be seeing in this body camera video, again, that has been or is about to be released by Sarasota Police. Let's take it live. This shot just came in as I was speaking a moment ago. This is live from Sarasota Police. There's Public Information Officer Genevieve Judge. So we're going to hear from them on the the officer-involved shooting that took place yesterday, November 15th, 2022. We're about 5 minutes away from this press conference getting underway and the actual video being displayed for the first time. Now, let's backtrack for a moment. And for our audience members who were not on the stream with us yesterday, this was the scene in Sarasota, and we're going to explain exactly what went down and how this transpired. It's around 10 o'clock in the morning, normal day in Sarasota County, not too far away, and this is the Fruitville area of Sarasota. You see the Publix signage there. This is the parking lot of a Publix where this begins. Now, Publix, for those of you outside the viewing area, one of the more common grocery stores, food stores that we have in the southeastern United States. Publix, extremely popular. People, including myself, I go to Publix all the time. So outside of Publix in the parking lot, a woman is loading groceries up into her car. Now, according to police, while she's loading groceries into the car, a 71-year-old Sarasota man attempts to snatch her purse. There's a struggle that then takes place. A witness then comes in, sees this struggle happening, attempts to intervene, and then the 71-year-old man attempts to flee. Now, the witness, according to police, then attempts to pursue that 71-year-old man, calls 911, and that's when the police response occurs. The man is said to be holding a shiny object. That shiny object later revealed to be a knife. And then I'm going to read this here so I have this right. A police report stating that the man had a shiny object in his hand, something shiny in his hand. After unsuccessful attempts by officers to order the man to drop the knife and get on the ground, the suspect aggressively advanced toward the officer with the knife in his hand. The suspect was again ordered to stop, drop the knife, and get on the ground, but he advanced several more steps towards the officer, who fired his weapon. So the officers shooting at the 71-year-old man holding the knife for what police have described as the suspect aggressively advancing towards the officer. The suspect is in stable condition at Sarasota Memorial Hospital despite being shot, expected to be okay. The officer, not hurt in the incident, placed on administrative leave, paid administrative leave, as is policy in Florida. This is where this took place, south of Tampa Bay in Sarasota at the intersection of Beneva Road and Fruitville Road. And to explain more and to hear a little bit of the 911 call, here's a report by our own Allison Henning.
911, what is the location of the emergency?
Publix over here on Beneva and Fruitville. This man just tried to grab this lady's purse.
A bold robbery in a busy part of Sarasota led to this large police presence along Fruitville Road Tuesday. Calls for help came from the Publix parking lot on Beneva Road just after 10 a.m. Shortly after officers arrived, they say shots were fired across the street.
This is a call nobody ever wants to hear, shots being fired and an officer having to call that over the radio. It's a bad day when an officer has to use force.
The suspect was taken to the hospital. We're told the veteran officer involved was not hurt. When Eagle 8 HD flew over the scene, we saw police focusing in on the west end of the Homewood Suites parking lot, an area where we saw someone's personal belongings scattered on the ground. It's unclear whether or not the suspect was armed. Police say the shooting case involving their officer is now in the hands of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Officials with FDLE tell us they are still gathering evidence, conducting interviews, and putting together a timeline. Once they do so, their findings will go over to the state attorney's office. In Sarasota, Allison Henning, 8 on your side.
And a thank you to Allison for that report. Again, we're live here on WFLA Now to now take you to the press conference where the body camera video is going to be shown. And why is this important, of course? This is important for transparency reasons, to get an understanding as to what transpired Weather protocol was followed with the officer discharging his or her weapon. And now we have Genevieve
The
Judge
white balance
stepping up
before we get started.
the podium. And
Everybody
we'll
good?
listen again
All right,
as
we're going
a
to go ahead and get
reminder.
started this morning, or this afternoon rather. Thank
Viewer
you all for
discretion is
joining
advised.
us. I know most of you, but my name is Genevieve Judge, and I serve as the Public Information Officer for the Sarasota Police Department. Before we get started, if we could please ask that you silence your cell phones before the news conference begins. Thank you. Today we have Chief Rex Trochet, along with Commander of our Criminal Investigations Division, Captain John Todd, here to speak with you all regarding yesterday's armed robbery and officer-involved shooting. Like we've mentioned before, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement is handling the investigation into the officer-involved shooting, and our agency will be handling the investigation into the armed robbery. Now, we are going to show you the body-worn camera video from the officer who was involved in this shooting yesterday. We do want to share that a word of caution: the images and information you're going to see in the video may be disturbing. Anytime a police officer has to use force to arrest a suspect or defend against an attack, it can be graphic and very difficult to watch. So there is strong language used by those shown in the video, so viewer discretion is advised. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chief Trochet. Chief?
Thanks, Genevieve. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. As you all know, yesterday we had an armed robbery and an officer-involved shooting near the intersection of Beneva and Fruitville in the city of Sarasota. Today I can share with you the armed robbery victim, an 83-year-old woman, is shaken but is thankfully okay. The officer involved in the shooting was not injured, and per policy, he has been placed on paid administrative leave. The suspect, who is facing numerous charges in connection to the armed robbery, is in stable condition post-surgery and is expected to survive. To speak more about the armed robbery that led to the shooting, I'll introduce Captain John Todd of our Criminal Investigations Division. Again, regarding the officer-involved shooting, that remains under investigation by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And releasing this video in such a timely manner was important for us to demonstrate our transparency and commitment to the community. We have been in talks with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement prior to doing this. This is a partnership, and they were okay with us releasing this video. We felt it was very important for the community to see this as soon as possible. I will note this, that moving forward, every shooting has different nuances. So this was done within about a 24-hour window. It happened at a time of day when everybody was here. We were fully staffed, everybody was working, so we were able to turn this around pretty quickly. But shootings are all different. So moving forward, this could happen in 24 hours, could happen in 48 hours, up to 72 hours. But we do believe that as soon as we were ready to put this out, it is very important to get that out to the community. So with that being said, I give you Captain Jonathan Todd.
Thanks, Chief. I appreciate it. Good morning. Thanks for coming. Again, I'm Captain Jonathan Todd, the commander of the Sarasota Police Department Criminal Investigations Division. I'm here this morning to share details about an armed robbery that led to an officer-involved shooting yesterday at approximately 10 a.m. It should be noted that the last officer-involved shooting with the Sarasota Police Department happened in February of 2021. This incident yesterday started as a 911 call about an armed robbery that occurred in the parking lot of the Publix at 501 North Beneva Road. The 83-year-old female victim would later tell investigators that she had just finished shopping and was loading groceries into her car when she was accosted by the suspect, who tried to pull her purse off her arm. The suspect was later identified as 71-year-old Paul Briandi of Sarasota. Robert Paul Briandi of Sarasota. The victim said that while she struggled with Briandi, he threatened to cut her with a shiny object that he was holding in his other hand. A nearby witness saw what was happening and tried to help the victim fend off her attacker. The suspect then fled southbound toward the McDonald's restaurant. The witness continued to follow the suspect while he was on the phone with 911, also videoing with his phone. As the witness followed closely behind Briandi, the suspect stopped and threatened to cut the witness with a knife that he was holding in his hand. The suspect continued walking southbound across Fruitville Road before he was ultimately confronted by the responding police officer in the westernmost parking lot of the Homewood Suites Hotel located at 3071 Fruitville Road. At this point, we will play the body camera video showing the officer-involved shooting. We will be showing the video up until the time of the shooting. Then we will show you a freeze frame of the suspect holding a knife. As a reminder, body-worn cameras are silent for the first 30 seconds prior to activation. So you'll see the video, but you won't hear any sound for a few seconds. I do want to issue a word of caution again that the video that you're going to view may be disturbing to some. Anytime a police officer uses force to arrest a suspect or defend against an attack, it can be graphic and difficult to watch. There is also strong language used by those shown in the video. Again, viewer discretion is advised.
Seven and 4, he's running towards the Homewood Suites.
Get on the fucking ground right now. Get on the ground right now. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Subject drops the knife. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Shots fired. Shots fired. Need to rescue. That's everyone. Drop the knife. Get on the fucking ground. Get on the ground right now! Get on the ground right now! Dispatcher got on that point. Get on the fucking ground right now! Get on the ground right now! Drop the knife! Drop the knife! Drop the knife! Subject charge on the knife! Drop the knife!
Okay. Again, I apologize about the graphic nature of the video, but unfortunately that's typically how these incidents evolve. So again, my apologies. The suspect, Briandi, was taken to Sarasota Memorial Hospital where he is currently in stable condition after having surgery yesterday. He's been charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault with a weapon without intent to kill, one of those against the police officer and one against the Good Samaritan witness, and also robbery with a weapon against the 83-year-old Publix shopper. Thankfully, the victim of the robbery, the Good Samaritan witness, and the officer were all uninjured. The involved officer has been placed on paid administrative leave, as the chief has already said, which is a standard procedure for our agency. He is a veteran police officer with nearly 17 years of service and is currently assigned to the Patrol Division of the Police Department. It's important for you all to know that the Sarasota Police Department is the lead law enforcement agency that is investigating the armed robbery portion of this event that occurred at against the Publix shopper and also the aggravated assault against the Good Samaritan witness. However, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement is the lead law enforcement agency investigating the officer-involved shooting. So I'm extremely limited on specific information about that incident that I can give you. At this time, I'll try and answer any questions that you might have about the events that led up to the officer-involved shooting.
guess, have you spoken to Briandi? Obviously, he had a motive in what he was doing, but has he spoken anything else beyond that?
So we haven't spoken to Briandi. We're going to leave that to FDLE. We want to ensure that we maintain that integrity of their investigation. So we will basically piggyback that interview that they had with him when they deem it appropriate.
It looked like the suspect pointing to his head saying, you know, I have mental health issues. Have you guys been able to confirm that at all?
Again, those are details that will be, encapsulated in the FDLE comprehensive report, and I just can't talk about that right now.
Can you talk about his past? Is he pretty familiar with Sarasota Police? I've seen some of his past record where he had some traffic citations and even tried to run through a traffic stop one time.
So he's a multi-state offender, New York. He's got charges in, I think, West Palm Beach. As far as Sarasota goes, he was arrested in 2003 for obstruction of justice. His charges go back to 1973. I mean, he's 71 years old, so he's been around for a bit.
Can you kind of speak to the unknowns in these situations? You know, I think when people see that video and just looking at people speaking about this yesterday, the question, of course, why didn't this officer use a taser has come up. But the unknowns when you're in a situation you just arrive on scene. Can you speak to that?
I will tell you that, and again, I don't want to get too far into the video because that's FDLE's kind of lane of the investigation. 10 minutes elapsed from the time the 911 call was made from the Publix robbery till that event occurred. So you're talking about split-second decisions. And I'll leave it at that. The rest of that, again, will be encapsulated in the FDLE report.
Is that an area where things like this used to happen? Or is...
No, I wouldn't say that. No, it's a fairly safe part of the city.
How's the young lady doing?
You know what? She's doing really well, and she did a heck of a job fighting him off. She was attacked from behind with an assailant with a knife. She did a really good job of protecting herself, and again, kudos to the Good Samaritan witness that intervened. We certainly don't encourage folks to chase after bad guys. He did that. Thankfully, he was able to give a really good description. He was on the phone with 911, videoing the suspect, following him. I also forgot to mention, or maybe I did mention, that the suspect at one point threatened to cut him with a knife. So, all that information he was able to relate to 911 was able to get to the officer. The officer was able to see the suspect crossing Fruitvale Road and was then able to turn into the hotel and confront him.
How's the officer doing today?
I think all things considered, he's doing well. Certainly, that's a pretty emotional and traumatic event, but physically, he's fine.
Did Briandi appear to be just maybe targeting a victim who he thought was easy to overcome?
It's tough to say until we talk to him or FDLE speaks with him. I'm hoping that he does give an interview, and that we're able to learn kind of some motive behind the initial event. But again, that's going to be determined by FDLE.
Now Christmas are coming, a lot of people are going to shop more. Do you plan to have more patrols or something on shopping centers?
Yeah, certainly going into the holidays, we do that, as policy anyway. Again, I go back to this is a really safe part of town to begin with. I would go so far as to call this a random encounter. It certainly doesn't happen over there very often. But certainly patrols will be increased at all shopping areas throughout the holidays.
Would you call this a crime of opportunity, being that he was attacking, an 80-year-old lady who was clearly vulnerable, putting her groceries into a car, that sort of situation?
That's certainly an option. I think without talking to him, we really we won't know what his motive truly was. I wouldn't rule that out, but it could be any number of things.
Going back, that his criminal record dates back to the 70s, I think you said.
73.
And he's in his 70s. It's clear he hasn't learned his lesson.
Yeah, you would think not. Yeah.
I guess, is there any hope that when he meets a judge again, that maybe he gets behind bars for even longer, so he's not able to hurt somebody else?
Certainly with violent offenders that attack, the most vulnerable of our citizens, the elderly. We expect this case to be, handled properly until the fullest extent of the law. That's at a certain portion of the timeline that's out of our hands. You know, all we can do is do a thorough investigation, write good reports, and give them the evidence that they need.
Any message, just, you know, because this is such a safe area, and these things don't happen often.
Yeah.
I think anybody who shops at that Publix or any Publix, especially females, you know, just maybe should be on alert. Obviously, this was bold. It was
Sure.
just after 10 o'clock in the morning. You don't expect something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, broad daylight, at night, you go back to the old axioms of, you know, you just be aware of your surroundings. You know, I find myself, you know, on my phone walking into Publix sometimes and completely unaware of what's going on around me, and I'm a police officer. So I would just say that, you know, when you're anywhere in the public like that, just keep an eye on what's going on around you. If you see something, say something. You know, this Good Samaritan witness went above and beyond the call of duty. But I think without his actions, we might not have had such a quick conclusion to the event. You know, I will go on to add that we're talking about a full hotel of you know, patrons there at the Homewood Suites, so that certainly could have turned into a pretty ugly situation over there.
So I'll jump in here. One of the nuances I just wanted to bring up as well is that Florida Department and law enforcement is investigating this. Is something that we changed about a year ago. We thought it was important to bring in another agency to do these types of investigations. Obviously, you can see that we're fully transparent as we bring this body-worn camera video. As I said, as soon as we could, we thought that was important. Just to kind of add to the question that you asked, Allison, I would add that the community are the police, and the police are the community. And I think that's something that we can't forget. We can't do this alone. We have limited resources. The community helps us. They call 911. We have a great dispatch. We get that information out quickly. And that's one of the reasons why we were able to take care of this as soon as we did. And as Captain Todd said, it wasn't more tragic because there were people staying in that hotel. I'm sure there were children in that hotel. So I think we avoided a tragedy that could have really, really gone sideways for our community. So with that being said, I just want to say thank you all for coming out on such short notice, and have a good day. Thank you.
Words there from the chief. We avoided a tragedy, as we have now the name of the suspect who is expected to be okay after having surgery at a Sarasota area hospital, 71-year-old Robert Paul Briandi. We're going to play back the video here for you again, look at it a little bit more closely, and also too, again, as a reminder, viewer discretion is advised. Of course, this is violent content, a violent encounter. You're also hearing a lot of expletives uttered over the course of this video being played as well. And so the very latest on this story, folks, it's on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. So if you want to read the very latest, if you want to watch this video back over, you can. It's going to be on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. But we'll stay here with you live a little bit longer because I know that the comment section was lighting up with comments. A lot of people who were surprised that was a 71-year-old man. And yes, the age was confirmed. 71-year-old Robert Paul Briandi, 83-year-old victim, again, in the parking lot of a Publix, just trying to load her groceries into her car when this man, according to police, comes with a knife and attempts to snatch her purse. That's when a chase occurs between the suspect and then being followed by a witness who attempted to intervene. It would go down the street southbound and then, of course, end up here at the Homewood Suites where the scene that we had yesterday, this is the video that you're looking at yesterday. So let's go back now to this video and let's show it to you. We'll kind of bring up audio here if we can.
Get on the fucking ground right now. Get on the ground right now. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Subject outside the knife. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Shots fired. Shots fired. Need rescue. That's everyone. Drop the knife.
So the most obvious thing to state, the most glaring observation, is that we have a suspect who's not complying with the officer's commands to get down on the ground. Also, too, this is somebody who, again, appears in the video and, according to police, is holding a knife in his hand. So you have somebody here who isn't complying and is a threat because, of course, he's holding this shiny object in his hand, which officers say is a knife. Now, the press release stated that there was an aggressive motion, an aggressive move by the suspect towards the officer. That, of course, is up to you and your definition of what you define to be aggressive. But according to the police report that we received here at WFLA, it was an aggressive move that the suspect made towards the officer, who has his gun drawn, pointed at the suspect, 71-year-old Robert Paul Briandi, who, again, is as we understand, has been charged in multiple states. And you see him there in his red flip-flops. This is, again, believed to be, and again, according to police, the same man who attempted to snatch a purse from an 83-year-old woman loading her groceries at the Publix down the street. And then, of course, the officer, in a span of approximately 10 minutes, according to officers in this press conference, this officer would respond and make direct contact with the suspect. So there you see the knife. They're highlighting it here multiple times. And he's not even, it's not as if he's holding it down towards his side. He is holding it in front of him as well and motioning towards the officer as well. So he's A, armed with a knife. B, he's holding it in a position where, even though he's not probably at that point, he's not within striking distance. He would have to be probably several feet closer to be within striking distance, an arm's length away. But also, too, he is motioning with the knife. You can see there, clearly he's motioning with the knife, and he's moving in the direction of the officer. And again, the number one thing is he is not complying with the commands by the officer to get down on the ground. So look, this is the number one thing that you have to do in these situations is listen to the commands of the officers. I know that there have been some comments that have been put forth in our comment section as to why potentially deadly force was used in this situation. People were asking, did he have a taser on him? We do not know if the officer had a taser on him. But this is, of course, going to be reviewed by FDLE as to whether or not it meets protocol and policy in Florida as far as did this officer follow training, follow how you're supposed to deal with this type of situation. I'll go to some of the comments here in the Facebook Live comment section. We don't have any idea to whether or not he has previous murder charges. We have heard, of course, that he has been charged in other states. So to our first commenter, don't know the answer to that question. It will, of course, have to be conducted as far as a thorough search into his criminal history. We just got his name 15 minutes ago. I can use our interactivity here in the Stream Center to animate your comments on screen. If it has #KJB, I can animate it on screen. If it doesn't have #KJB, I'll let it continue to scroll on screen. We're not going to be on stream for too much longer. We got to get going for Tracking the Tropics coming your way at 2 o'clock Eastern time. So this is interesting. Monique wants to know, was he under the influence? That's going to be, of course, part of a full investigation by FDLE to determine whether or not he was under the influence of alcohol or narcotics or some substance of some kind. We don't know. What was interesting in this video, however, is how he points to his head. Now, I can't hear it too well in my earpiece. I can't. But you can see that he's going like this. Now, I don't know. I'm gonna where are my headphones? I'm gonna grab my headphones. I want to listen to this with higher quality headphones to see if we can ascertain as to what is being said here. Let's listen.
Get on the fucking ground. Get on the ground right now. Get on the ground right now. Said dispatcher guy was on point. Get on the fucking ground right now. Get on the ground right now. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Subject charge on the knife. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Shots fired. Shots fired. Need rescue. 1071. Drop the knife. Get on the fucking ground.
So I can't really make out what the suspect is saying. Let's also point out, though, that this is video that is being played in a room. There's echo going on as well. Maybe if we get the actual raw video itself, we'll be able to isolate some of that audio and listen to what the suspect is saying in this moment, what he's trying to indicate to the officer. But I can't make it out because, again, we're talking about the audio being played back in a room where there's already an echo effect going on. You already have the officer screaming expletives at the suspect's in his direction, trying to get him on the ground and to disarm himself. It's just really difficult. Anybody else? I mean, have difficulty? I would imagine everybody out there on stream also too having difficulty making out exactly what the suspect is saying. But this is the part to me that's most interesting. He's pointing at his head. And that's why I think one of the questions was asked by one of the reporters as to whether or not even was he under the influence, back to the original comment, but is there a mental health episode that is currently going on? Is there a mental health component to this? This, again, appears to be, and by everything that we know about this area, appears to be, according to police, a random incident. A relatively nice part of town, Sarasota. Woman loading up her groceries in a Publix parking lot, super public area. During the day, daylight hours, for someone to just go up to an 83-year-old woman loading up her groceries to snatch a purse, it certainly seems like a very random act, though you heard police there mentioning as well that they're going to be stepping up enforcement in areas known for shoppers over the holidays. E.T., I wondered this as well. He says, #KJB, objects in the body camera are closer than they appear. This is a great observation, because I was talking about that it appears in the video that the suspect is not within striking distance. Regardless, he's not complying with commands. But you can also see the officer is standing about. This gives us some scale here. The officer is standing about near the driver's side door handle, give or take, and he's at the front of the car. So I think ET is right that because of that fisheye lens and that super wide perspective that we're getting on the body camera, that distance, it appears like the suspect is farther away than he really is. Whether or not he's within striking distance with that knife, if he can lunge forward in this moment and harm the officer, that of course is going to be the subject of the FDLE investigation. But again, not complying with commands, holding the knife up in a position, of course, where if he was within striking distance, he could use it as a weapon, not moving backwards, instead moving forwards. Of course, this is going to be under the scrutiny of the FDLE investigation, but there is a whole lot of different ways that the suspect, 71-year-old Robert Paul Briandi, could have surrendered or de-escalated the situation. And over the course of these, how many seconds was it? Maybe 20 or so seconds. He only made the situation worse by refusing to comply with commands to get on the ground, refusing to drop the knife, and getting closer to the officer rather than farther away. Any other final comments before we wrap up this live stream here, folks? Tyler says he clearly wasn't attempting to put the knife down. Hindsight, yes, could have been handled differently, but law enforcement was going in blind and alone in a tight space. I couldn't be law enforcement for an hour with a blue heart for law enforcement. #HateJB. Yeah, the tight space thing, Tyler, is really interesting because you're between two cars. For this officer, there's only two ways to go when you're stuck between these two cars. You're either going forward or backward. You're in a narrow space to begin with. It's an interesting observation too. I think that some people are in our comment section are wondering if this could have been handled differently without having to discharge his weapon. But at the same time, the officer fired shots. The suspect in this case is post-surgery now and expected to make a full recovery, as we understand it. And it's really up to FDLE to determine whether or not the firearm was used in a way to wound and not kill. This is a veteran officer of the department, as we understand it, and somebody who's been with Sarasota Police for some time. This is a good question, too, from P2H. #HeyJB, why is the officer without backup? 5 feet away from the subject, what did the officer do to de-escalate? The de-escalating tactic is to try and get the suspect on the ground and get him in a non-threatening position. Get him, of course, to drop the knife, get him on the ground. I'm not an officer, but we've covered enough of these cases to know a bit of just basic knowledge, surface level knowledge of protocol here of what the officer is trained to do. And the first thing is to try to handle the situation by getting the suspect in custody without incident, by getting them to drop their weapon, get them on the ground, and take them in safely without harm to either the suspect or the officer himself. But why the suspect is without backup? Look, that's likely as a result of just getting there first. Of course, by now, Sarasota Police are all converging on this area. This is the first officer at the scene doing what he can to handle the situation before the suspect has the opportunity to get away or, worse, harm somebody else in this particular complex. So he's trying everything that he can to, you would imagine he's trying to do everything that he can to get there as quickly as possible and prevent anybody, any civilian, any member of the Sarasota community from getting hurt. And I would imagine the backup was probably, we saw the police response yesterday. There's a massive police response, so backup was probably not too far behind this initial officer response. Folks, that's going to do it for us here on WFLA Now. We appreciate you joining us live on stream. The very latest on this story on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. If I don't talk to you, have a great weekend, folks.